Wrestling fans, my name is Marcus Stewart, and welcome to Call It in the Ring. We are doing a recap and discussion of last night's Smackdown Live. That is the September 4th show, 2018, emanating from Detroit, Michigan. For some reason, it feels like we were just in Detroit, and I have no idea why, but I don't know. When I saw where they were, it's like, didn't we just do a thing in Detroit, or something happened in Detroit? I don't know. Something about Detroit is giving me a deja vu, if you will. But enough about that. Thanks for listening. And if you'd like to subscribe and download on iTunes, you can look this up on Marcus Writes About Games. You can also do the same on Podbean, just if you would like a purely audio version to accompany the YouTube version that you are listening to. Or if you're already listening to the iTunes and Podbean version, then there's also a YouTube version. So, choices. Variety is the spice of life, as they say. So, let's hop to it. Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella come out to the ring to be interviewed by Renee Young. Crowd's really hot for Bryan. And they just talk about how they want to get their hands on Miz and Maryse, as is their custom. They call both of them cowards. And Miz and Maryse eventually pop up on the screen. Or actually, before that, I'm sorry. There was a video from WWE.com showing Miz and Maryse. Apparently, they'd shown up earlier in the day to an empty arena and called out Bryan and Brie, who, of course, were not there because, it was an empty arena. And, they took that as, see, they're cowards. They didn't want to face us. And then, now that the show is live, Miz and Maryse are nowhere to be found. But rather, they pop up on screen and say that they are at an Italian restaurant somewhere in Detroit because they tried to call them out earlier in the day and Bryan and Brie weren't there. So they're like, hey, we left. So we rented out this place because we don't want to be around other Detroit natives. And we're just going to chill here and eat. And of course, Bryan and Miz call BS on this. But instead, they get Andrade Cien Almas and Zelina Vega, once again, who come out and talk about how they, enjoyed beating the crap out of Bryan and Brie last week. And Almas gets a chance to speak again, and his English is still not great. It's actually much worse than, say, like Shinsuke Nakamura and Asuka, who those two I can actually understand pretty well. Like I at least me, I know that some people give them flack because they're obviously English is not their first language, but I've never really had much problem understanding either Nakamura or Asuka. Like they get their general point across relatively well, whereas Almas I'm literally like really having to listen in terms of like, what is he? I think I know what he said. And, that's not his fault. He's still learning. Obviously English is not his first language, but I kind of question having him speak this much when he's got a perfectly good mouthpiece named Zelina Vega standing right next to him. And I guess on one hand you could say that, well, he's not going to get better unless he speaks live. It's like, well, he can practice backstage or just not on live TV. Like, don't put him out there until he can, he gets better, basically, until he gets better. So this, like, even the commentators were kind of like, what the hell did Almas just say? So yeah, not great, from Almas, but again, because his, the language barrier, but we do get a rematch between Daniel Bryan and Almas, and Almas might not be able to talk, but he can damn sure wrestle, and this was another really nice match from these two. I said last week that I really enjoyed their first encounter, and this was, like just a continuation of that. Both guys are great. They work really well together. I've become a big fan of Almas's that big boot that he does, that he fakes out into the spinning like back elbow. That always gets me, even though he does it all the time. It always gets me of like, what's he? Oh, okay, he faked him out. Like, yeah, I either think it's like he messed up, or like I don't know. I just really think he's going for a big boot, which is the point of the move. But I've become a big fan of that, and I also become a fan of when wrestlers learn from their opponents, because he tried it again on Bryan, and Bryan was ready for it, where he, of course, missed the big boot, which is on purpose, but then caught Almas in the back with a kick before he could hit the elbow. Almas hit this really nice drop kick to Bryan as Bryan was doing his running knee off the apron to the floor. And Bryan, at one point, almost emulated his wife Brie the previous night on Raw, where, you know, if you listen to my Raw review, we talked about how Brie twice in her match kind of screwed up the suicide dive and almost kind of really hurt herself. Whereas Bryan, he did a suicide dive and he kind of clipped the rope. Like, he still hit it pretty well, but you could tell he clipped it a bit. And I was like, oh man, his wife's rubbing off on him there a bit. So I just thought that was funny to see them both kind of almost kind of the same thing for both of them back-to-back nights. Thankfully nothing happened, of course. But unlike last week, we did get an ending here where Bryan was able to hit the running knee, which almost sold the hell out of, just doing a really nice looking flip, and got the win over Almas. And this was a good match. Bryan should have won because he's the bigger star, but Almas looks awesome in defeat. And Almas is beginning a lot of these featured spots lately, like, you know, obviously the one-off with Styles, winning, I guess mostly winning the feud with Rusev, and now with this stuff with Bryan, like, you know, they clearly have some stock in him, as they should, at least in my opinion, because I like Almas and Vega a lot as an act. Just don't have Almas speak too much for a while. That's all I ask, or at least keep it short and sweet. Maybe have him say a sentence at most. But good match here. Let's see. Miz and Maryse. Afterwards, Vega gets attacked by Nikki. It's kind of retribution for last week, and Nikki hits her like the Brie mode thing. Or I'm sorry, I didn't say that right. Brie mode. There we go. The Brie mode running knee, and kind of nails Vega like right in the face. And I don't think it was as bad as it looked. Like, Vega seemed fine, but it looked like she got hit like square in the nose with a solid knee from Brie. I was like, ooh, like I noticeably kind of flinched when I was like, ooh, that looks stiff. But I think it looked like Vega was fine. After the match, actually, I might have gotten mixed up. I think Miz and Maryse popped up on screen after the match to say that they were at the Italian restaurant. But regardless, after the commercial break, we see Bryan and Brie heading to their car to leave. Bryan is still in his gear, but they're clearly leaving, and they get stopped by an interviewer who's like, hey, where you guys going? And they're like, oh, you know, we're feeling kind of hungry. Might gonna, you know, drive around Detroit, see if we can find a place to eat. Maybe a certain Italian restaurant. And Bryan says that hopefully they don't have a dress code. And I was like, okay, I'm down for that. You know, I am always a huge fan of things in wrestling that happen outside of the arena, like, you know, whether it be like a bar brawl or like someone going to someone's house or stuff like that. I always like that kind of stuff just because it's different from the norm, and you can have a lot of fun with those segments. So I was like, okay, I'm cool with this. This brings us to Becky and Charlotte, the ongoing saga of Becky turning heel because she is upset at Charlotte, according to her, stealing her spotlight, and Charlotte being like, nah, and the fans almost being squarely behind Becky. This time they have a split screen interview in two different parts of the arena, and Becky is still getting cheered a lot, like Charlotte not so much, more getting booed. So that's still a problem for this story. They tried here. They had a fairly heated exchange where they just talked about living in each other's shadow, where, Becky said that, she accused Charlotte of keeping Becky in her shadow, and then Charlotte fired back saying that Becky has no idea what it's like to live in other people's shadows, because she spent her entire life living under one of the biggest shadows ever, talking about her father, Ric Flair. And Becky says stuff like, it was a full-time job being Charlotte's friend, because she's had to put up with Charlotte's insecurities and having to comfort her and tell her that she's good. But, that's done now. She just wants to take the title from her. And Charlotte gets a really good line at the end saying that she, just talking about how Becky threw away like years of friendship for this championship, and says that, when we were friends, you were never second best, but in the ring, not so much. And that's what bothers you. And I thought that was a pretty good burn. The crowd is really kind of getting in the way of this story, just because no one wants to boo Becky here. Even though Becky, to her credit, she's trying really hard to come off as to try to come off as evil, I guess, but she's not, there's nothing really unlikable about her. Like I said, she's just naturally, she's always been like naturally a baby face. She has an allure about her that you can't, like, I don't know, it's one of those X factors, like how can you not like Becky Lynch, really? And seeing her with this edge, it only makes it better than worse for me and a lot of people. And again, going back to Charlotte, even though I love Charlotte to death, she's the opposite of Becky in that she's always come off as a natural villain because of her, her status, her ability, even just the way she kind of carries herself. Like, she has an air of I'm better than you about her, even if that's not how she, maybe that's not how her mentality is, at least not like in a dick sense. Like, of course she's confident, and she should be because she's great, but you just can't help but get that like when she was a heel, she turned that up to like 11 of like, hey, I'm better because of my last name and because I'm, genetically superior, like all the stuff she used to say. So it's still really hard to, and Charlotte, to her credit, isn't trying to come off as so much as a sympathetic babyface. She's just kind of keeping it real and just saying, like that line of like, you were like, it's straight up saying that Becky was always lesser than her in the ring, but it's not Charlotte's fault that that's the case. Like, because she said like, what was I supposed to do? Like, lay down for you and not win the title? So that helps a lot in terms of argument. Like, they're not trying to paint her as like this victim, or she's not painting herself as this victim. She's just like, she's more like, what the fuck is wrong with you, Becky? So that helps. But again, the crowd, it's no matter what either of these two do, again, short of maybe Becky kidnapping Ric Flair and castrating him live on TV, I don't think the crowd is going to be swayed to cheer Charlotte over Becky. So I'm looking forward to the match, and if nothing else, the reaction to it should be very entertaining. So moving on, we've got Naomi versus Peyton Royce in this kind of one note kind of mini feud between the two. The last couple weeks, Naomi has lost to both of the Iconics due to interference from one of them. Of course, the Iconics make fun of Naomi post-match, and they get into like a fake argument deciding who Naomi enjoys being defeated by more. Naomi wastes no time in this match. She like straight up decks Peyton to start and beats her in just a couple minutes. Hits her with a nice roll-up, but then immediately Billie Kay kicks her in the head, and she gets a 2-on-1 beatdown, an Australian, what would you call it? An Aussie attack, and Aussie assault. Aussie assault, that's a good name. Maybe that should have been their name instead of the Iconics. Nah, I like the Iconics, but Aussie assault on Naomi until Asuka makes her big return from something. I don't actually know why she hasn't been on TV. I don't think she's been hurt to my knowledge, but she's back. And she comes in and, of course, beats the crap out of the Iconics, and the crowd is really happy to see her. She goes and checks on Naomi, and yeah, Asuka's back. Hopefully she can murder people without slipping on banana peels and losing because of flukes. So, who knows? If depending on what happens with Becky and Charlotte, I still would love to see Asuka and Becky co-addicts. They've never faced each other, so we shall see. But good to have Asuka back. Big fan of hers. We get a really cool video on Jeff Hardy, specifically like his talking about how this is his first time in the cell, and it's him talking about how his eyes are open, kind of similar to the kind of stuff he's been saying lately, but focusing more on like this is his first chance to wrestle in the cell, and a history of all the Daredevil things that Jeff has done over the many years of his career, and saying that, Orton pushed him to this point, and, the cell, it's not going to contain him, but it's going to set him free. And I'm excited for this match, but I'm still slightly terrified because Jeff is going to jump off that thing, and damn it, it's going to be scary, hoping that he doesn't hurt himself. And, I am more than used to Jeff jumping off of things, having watched him his entire career, like since he's pretty much since him and his brother debuted properly as the Hardys. So yeah, I've seen Jeff jump off just about everything except for the cell. And, you always, you kind of, it's crazy how you get kind of desensitized to it to a degree of like, man, that's scary and high, but like, oh, it's Jeff, he'll be fine. Probably, he's always fine. This one, I don't know why, I just like the cell. I'm like, oh, I'm not wishing any bad omens, I'm not jinxing Jeff. But yeah, hopefully he doesn't die. Miz and Maryse come in to see Paige, and they want to know, they want to call out Bryan and Brie again. Paige tells them that, hey, those guys left. Why weren't you here earlier? And of course, Miz and Maryse kind of sidestep that and just turn it around, saying like, oh, I guess, can we ever get these two in the ring, those cowards? And Miz and Maryse go to leave, but Paige is like, hey, since you're here, how about you go have a match? Miz, being a jerk, pretty much says nah. And like, why don't you be a good general manager and actually do something not dumb for once? And Paige is like, okay, how about this? If you can either go for your match against and kind of an open challenge kind of thing, or if you leave here, don't ever bother coming back. So Miz is dealt an ultimatum here. This leads to R-Truth, who is still searching for Carmella because his mission in life has become to pin Carmella in order to earn a title match of some sort. He sees Maryse backstage, kind of with her back turned, and he assumes that it's Carmella. And of course, Maryse is insulted that Truth, whatever this mistake Maryse for what she calls to be Staten Island trash. Miz comes up, and we get an Awesome Truth reunion, which, if you unfamiliar, Awesome Truth was the tag team of Miz and R-Truth from like 2011. So it's been a long time. And Miz brings that up, saying like, hey, how long has it been since you and I have been like in a match or in a main event together? And Truth is like 7 years. And Miz is like, oh yeah, kind of like the last time you were also relevant. And saying, kind of ripping on Truth, saying like he forgot that Truth even works here, and to never talk to his wife again. And then Truth being Truth, is insulted and says that he doesn't understand what Carmella sees in Miz. Of course, still thinking that Maryse is Carmella for some reason. Good stuff here. Next up, Samoa Joe comes to the ring, and he's talking about how he kept, because last week he promised that or alluded to the promise that he would show up at AJ Styles' house. Unfortunately, that did not happen, which I'm kind of bummed out about, because again, like I said before, it's real. I always like when you see things happen outside of the arena, so I was looking forward to the idea of Joe showing up at AJ's house and starting some crap, but alas, he does not. And, he says that he only did that to kind of prove a point, and, but that he kept his promise to Wendy Styles, AJ's wife, as well as the rest of his family, that he would send AJ Styles home because he said that he might show up at his house. AJ's had to sit at home and be there, kind of waiting to see if Joe would show up. So he's had to kind of be a guard dog, so to speak. And he's like, hey, thanks to me, AJ actually cares about his family now, so you're welcome. And, just being a big old jerk, big old Samoan jerk. And then AJ Styles pops up on the screen looking very serious, and he says, there's one thing about a man threatening another man. That's fine, he gets that, but a man threatening another man's family, well, that's when the talking stops. And then here comes AJ Styles, who rushes the ring, and him and Joe get into a big old fight. And it spills to the outside. At one point, AJ grabs a chair and just swings for the fences at Joe's head. Joe barely gets out of the way, and the chair hits the post. But AJ, and then refs start coming out along with Paige to try to keep them apart. AJ does a big, big dive plancha on type of Joe and some refs, because he will not be denied. He can't be denied, damn it. But Paige and some refs, Paige is trying to talk him down, saying, save it for the cell. And AJ is very slowly and reluctantly pulled to the back. Yeah, cool. Nice little step forward in this story, which I'm still digging. I really like that these guys have a legit personal issue, which sometimes you don't get enough of in wrestling these days, or at least in WWE. So, good stuff still here from both guys. R-Truth. A lot of R-Truth tonight. This is the R-Truth's coming out party. He finds Carmella, the actual Carmella this time, and Ty Dillinger is with him this time, Ty has become kind of his unofficial sidekick, it seems, or like his straight man. And he's, he basically asks Carmella, he still thinks that Carmella isn't Carmella. He thinks that Maryse was Carmella. Ty tries to correct him, no, this is actually Carmella. And Maryse, of course, Carmella is insulted at the idea that he could confuse Maryse for her, because according to Carmella, Maryse would be bagging groceries in Montreal if she wasn't married to Miz, which was a nice little burn. Nice burns going around tonight. And Truth asks Carmella to accompany him, because he's going to have a match with Miz in the main event. And he's like, hey, you want to come out there with me? Because he also tells Carmella what Maryse said about her being Staten Island trash. And Carmella doesn't say yes, but, doesn't say no either. And Ty is like, what are you doing, dude? And then Truth proves that he's crazy like a fox, because he's like, what am I doing? Because Ori, I think he said something about teaching Ty something, and Ty's like, what could you ever teach me? And he's like, simple, how to get into the main event of Smackdown, playa. I don't think he said playa. It's more of he didn't turn into Teddy Long. But yeah, Truth is main eventing Smackdown tonight against Miz, which, first time Truth is main evented anything in many years. Cool. Why not? Do something different every now and again. And I like Truth enough. A lot of people like Truth, so it can't hurt. We get Randy Orton's own little Hell in a Cell video, kind of focusing on his history of being a sadistic prick and all the terrible things that he's done to people over in his career, and saying how, he is going to basically murder Jeff Hardy and the Cell, talking about how he's been in multiple Cell matches and he knows what it's all about, and he's going to do things to Jeff that's going to make everyone cringe and, just feel just dirty. It's going to scare people, but it's going to make Orton a very, very happy man. Again, another nice video here. I was liking these. We get to our next match. It's been a while since we've had a match. This is the second triple threat tag team match in this kind of number one contenders. I don't know if I call it a tournament, because it's not really a tournament. There's no brackets, but kind of like a half tournament between the Usos, Sanity, and Rusev Day. And then the winners of this match will challenge the winners of last week's three-way tag match, The Bar. And then the winner of that match will become the number one contenders to New Day's SmackDown tag team titles. at Hell in a Cell. So, this match was fine. It was just a fun, kind of chaotic 6-man, tag match, or triple threat tag team match would be a more accurate term. Somewhat, I don't know if I was, I felt like I was surprised at this going in, but then thinking about it, it made sense. Rusev Day picks up the win. Rusev and Aiden English, they pin Eric Young, after Eric Young almost won. He got his feet on the ropes, pinning Rusev, but then Aiden was right there to knock him off the ropes, allowing Rusev to hit the Machka kick and get the 1-2-3. It's a happy time in Bulgaria right now, as well as wherever Aiden English is from. And after the match, the bar comes out and, gives him the old stare down with the thumbs that makes them look like indecisive film critics. But it should be a fun match next week. Cool for Rusev Day. This brings us to our main event of the night: The Miz versus R-Truth. Who would have ever thought we'd be seeing that in 2018? I guess you could say that Awesome Truth explodes here, and of course Carmella does come out in Truth's corners, and she even does take part in his rap. She's saying "What's up" and stuff during his rap. So Carmella might be a face now. And also, I didn't mention this, but they did announce in the commercials or so during the show that they're doing another season of the Mixed Match Challenge that starts this month. I think it's on the 16th. And that one of the teams is Carmella and R-Truth. So I guess, there's obviously, I guess, kind of a prelude to that. Did the Mixed Match Challenge, I feel like, wasn't season 1 this year? I feel like it wasn't that long ago. It had to have been or was it late last year? It feels like it was 2018, but maybe it was last year. Actually, you know what? I think it was last year because one of the teams was Charlotte and Bobby Roode, and Bobby Roode was still on Smackdown at the time. So maybe, yeah, I guess so. I don't know why, but it feels like we just finished the Mixed Match Challenge not that long ago. But they're doing another one. So now we have 4 shows to build up to. Though this is kind of different. It's not a pay-per-view. It's a series of shows, like a mini series. I didn't watch all of the first Mixed Match Challenge. I only saw a few of the matches. I watched maybe the first bracket, and then maybe one match in the second bracket, and then didn't finish the rest of it. But cool, whatever. Anyway, went on a weird tangent there about the Mixed Match Challenge, but this match was whatever. It was R-Truth and Miz. Miz stealing Daniel Bryan's moves. Truth doing his usual stuff. Carmella acting kind of like a face, kind of cheering on Truth here. And kind of the surprise is that Bryan and Brie Bella, their music hits. Bryan is coming to the ring. A distracted Miz is rolled up by Truth, and Truth picks up the surprise upset win. And then immediately after that, Bryan and Brie hit the ring and start beating the crap out of Miz and Maryse. They lock, Miz gets locked in the yes lock. And then Maryse takes the Brie mode knee. This one was less no shattering as the one Vega got. Which, speaking of Vega, her and Almas come out again, and they prevent any more damage to Miz and Maryse, which is a nice bit of continuity. They're upset, so they come again, and again that's another kind of featured spot for Almas. They beat up Bryan and Brie for a bit, but eventually the good guys are able to turn it around, and the married couple lock in stereo yes locks on Vega and Almas as Miz and Maryse look on the ramp, escaping. Miz at one point tries to run into the ring, thinks about it, and then Bryan lets go to hold, and then he kind of slips and falls as he stops in his tracks, which was nice stuff. And that's how we close the show. So, good SmackDown, decent SmackDown. Bryan versus Miz, clearly kind of the main story here, or at least in this episode. Everything got touched on. Where is Shinsuke Nakamura? That's my big question. We haven't seen him the last couple weeks. He's the United States champion. Kind of miss him. Though at the same time, I was thinking about that a few days ago, and then I kind of realized that, like, he doesn't really have anyone to challenge him that would make sense in terms of, like, there's no real face mid-card guy that could, that's ready to face him. Like, because it's kind of, if you think about SmackDown's singles scene, it's like all main event guys or like upper main event guys, like Hardy, like, think about all the big faces. The Hardy is busy with Orton, plus he just got done feuding with Shinsuke. AJ's the champion, and Bryan is tied up with Miz. So those are your big three, and they're all super busy with their own things. And then after that, it's, I guess there's Rusev. Yeah, why not do Rusev? But now he's in the tag title scene. A lot, everyone else is kind of either in a tag team or like a jobber who has no business challenging for the U.S. title. But now that I say Rusev, he's kind of the only guy that fits that spot, but he's doing his own thing. So they're kind of in a pickle with Nakamura. It's like, well, what do you do with him right now? I mean, you can have him beat random people, but who can you have a program with? So maybe that's what they're trying to figure out, and not have him on TV, but at least have him cut some vignettes and have him, do his Knock America being a jerk thing just to remind us of his existence. But other than the lack of Nakamura, still a totally solid episode of SmackDown. And, we continue our march towards the Cell and the Mixed Match Challenge and the Mae Young Classic that starts tonight, and the Super Show in Australia, and Evolution next month. And, I don't know, Vince McMahon's Electric Wrestling Boogaloo that probably happens next week. Who knows what else WWE has going on right now. It's a very busy time in the company. So, yeah, but thanks for listening, guys. Once again, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Really appreciate it. And, stay tuned for my Raw review next Tuesday and my SmackDown review next Wednesday. And once again, if you like video game stuff, I got a show called Carving Gaming Rushmores you can check out as well. Same place on my YouTube channel, as well as my iTunes and Podbean pages. Anyways, let's wrap this up. Thanks for listening, guys. Have a good one.